morning, everyone, and welcome to the Voice of South Pacific broadcast, a live broadcast from Seattle, Washington. This is our broadcast, like today, talking about a really great topic. It's about climate change. But before we continue on, I'd like to give this opportunity to Paulina Vuivoko. Please, if you could just lead us, with a short prayer. Um, Thank you, Pastor Aseli. We'll have Paulina lead us with a word of prayer, then we can continue on. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Let us pray. Compassionate, ever living God, we humble ourselves before you at this time as we continue to trust in the wisdom and insights from you. Thank you for all the facilitators and even the participants this morning. And thank you, Lord, for bringing us to another new month. We leave our lives and all to you. Please guide us from here. May honor and glory be yours. In Jesus' wonderful name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Pastor Paulina. And we'd like to welcome everyone. Uh, I'd like to introduce, our special guest, for today, Addison Houston. Addison is a climate adaptation strategist from the King County, Seattle and King County's Climate and Health Equity. And we have question, but at the same time, whatever question that is related to the topic today about the climate changes, we'd love it, to also ask, that is very important. Also, thank you, Jennifer Dev is our communication specialist for the Climate and Health Equity Initiative of Public Health. So with all the leaders that are here with us today, please also share this information in your native language, and we'll give you a little time to also share that. Welcome, Edison Houston, with the great topic. Everybody would love, to have you share, this great topic about how important of us, to live on a clean climate.
Hey, good morning. Aloha kakao. Thank you all for having me to be here today. It's really a pleasure to join you all, and happy to share whatever I can today. And if I don't have the answers, happy to help find those answers for you all.
Okay, thank you, Edison. Before we continue on, I'd like to I see quite a lot of us are here. We'd like to know who are the facilitators and all those, that are here with us on the program today. I would like to have each and everyone, introduce yourself and which community and what is your native language. Okay, we'll start from Pastor Aseli. Pastor Aseli, can you unmute your phone?
Sorry. Yeah, my name is Aseri. I'm a pastor here in Everett, and I'm from Fiji.
Islands of Fiji, Bula. Okay, and
Bula
I think we also have Jennifer. Jennifer, would you like to introduce yourself? I see you on the screen.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Jennifer Dev. I also work at Public Health with Addison. I'm a communications specialist for our Climate and Health Equity Initiative. And my job is basically to help share information about how climate change is impacting our health with the community so that everybody has the information they need to help keep their loved ones safe. So thank you so much for having us here today, Sylvia. It's so great to be here with so many of our valued community members.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer. Yes, of course, these are all community leaders, like senior program, leaders, with the Asian Pacific Islanders, Marshallese, Micronesia, Samoan, Fijian, and Tongan. Okay, and the next that I can see on screen, Lupe Talamoni.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Sylvia, for this opportunity. My name is Lupe Talamoni, and I'm representing the Samoan community. It's nice to see everyone here today.
Thank you, Lupe. Next is Sina Packer.
Good morning, Malolele. I am Sina Aloitafuna Tuivaipeka. I'm representing the Tongan community.
Thank you, Sina.
Proud to be here. Thank you.
Okay, and the next I can see like a shoe, but I don't know who is that. Like a white shoe.
Hi, ma'am. It's me, Lydia. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Hi, Lydia.
Hi, ma'am. Hi, everyone. My name is Lydia. I am representing our Fijian community here in Seattle, Bula Vinaka.
Wonderful. Bula. Thank you, Lydia. And the next I can see the president or the director of the Micronesia. Is that Lowell?
I think Lowell step out for a minute. He has another meeting. I'll be sitting in this one. I'm Russell. Yakwe, I'm the Marcelis.
Thank you so much for joining with us today. Thank you so much. And the next I can see that's Lina.
Hi, I'm Lena Diaz-Sobo, just here chiming in.
Okay, Talofa and also Malolele. Okay, well, now we're going back to, because our climate changes program, it's about like the how important it is, for us to live on a clean climate changes. So we have the question, whoever wanted to go first, but I would like to maybe start from Pastor Aseli, if you wanted to go ahead and start the first question, and then we can continue on.
Yeah, just thank you for the opportunity, Sylvia. I would start off with I think the first question. We're probably familiar with the word or even the phrase, the climate change. But can you tell us what your definition of it?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great place to start. So when we talk about climate change and what it is, really the term climate change in its most simple way refers to changes in the Earth's weather patterns and temperatures, typically looking at a 30-year average. So when we're talking about climate change, really it's a reflection of how the temperatures or the weather patterns we're experiencing are changing from the weather patterns that we're typically used to. It means that we're not experiencing the same weather patterns that we used to and that we used to be familiar with. So really when we're looking at like heat, for example, we're seeing temperatures getting hotter and hotter, and that rate of change is actually speeding up. Part of it is due to natural variations in the Earth's weather systems, such as the El Nino, La Nina weather currents that happen from the changes in oceanic currents in the ocean. But the bigger part that we're commonly referring to when we're talking about climate change is the human impact, or the human-driven climate change, which is a result of greenhouse gas emissions, pollution, as well as land use change, and ways that we're changing the way that our Earth's ecosystems function to the point where they're no longer able to sustain or maintain those stable conditions that we've been really used to. And so for the last several hundred years, we've developed in a way that has assumed that the Earth's weather and climate patterns are fixed. And so what we're now starting to see is that's not true. And we're seeing these changes happening. So we're actually really going into some unknown territory with how the Earth behaves, how weather patterns behave, and how conditions such as extreme weather are occurring and the frequency in which these extreme weather events are occurring.
Answer the question?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. The next question, like before we continue on, I would like you please, like to just take like a couple seconds and share the program, to all your communities, like all your friends and everybody, so that everybody could also listen and consume, like the great information topic that we're discussing today. Please, 1, 2, 3, share it to all your friends on Facebook, and also let everybody knows we're going live on social media, Facebook, and also YouTube live right now. Voice of South Pacific. Okay, the next one will be going to the Samoan community leader, Lupe Talamoni.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sylvia. Mr. Addison, you mentioned how about you're familiar with the phrase, sorry. But my question is, how is the climate change affecting people's health? And who is the most at risk?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the times when climate change and talking about climate change, we lose sight of how it's impacting humans. There's a lot of talk about how it's impacting Earth, how it's impacting animals and other species, but it's really important that we do dive into these human health impacts that are resulting from climate change. So as I mentioned just a moment ago, climate change is really resulting in changes in our weather patterns and temperatures from what we're used to. And so this means that we're being exposed to conditions that our bodies might not be used to. So here in the Northwest, for example, we are seeing more frequent extreme heat. So I think many of you might recall back to the June 2021 heat dome, where that was really one of the first times we've seen temperatures in excess of 100 degrees here in the Pacific Northwest. And while that may not seem like a lot, there are a lot of areas around the country that do see hotter temperatures than this, here in the Northwest, people are not acclimated or are not used to that type of heat. And really our buildings are not developed in a way that can offer protection when we see temperatures that high. So when we're seeing the effects of climate change resulting in changes of these weather patterns, it's really exposing us to conditions that we're not prepared for. Either our built environment, like the homes that we live in, or the buildings that we occupy for our work, or the activities that we generally do on a day-to-day basis. There's a bit of a mismatch now between the weather patterns that we were used to and we're familiar with and what we're now starting to see. And what that's doing is really, it's exposing us to things that can be more detrimental to our health. So when we have extreme heat, for instance, because we don't have a lot of buildings with air conditioning, it's a lot easier for people to hit temperatures where they are suffering from heat-related illness, such as overheating, dehydration, heat stress, heat stroke, a number of things that can happen when your body doesn't have the ability to cool down. Similarly, we're also seeing an increase in wildfire smoke episodes here in the Northwest. So with climate change increasing or decreasing the amount of rainfall that we usually have, we're starting to see forest conditions dry out. And when that's paired with extreme heat, we're seeing this increasing frequency of wildfire, which can cause these huge plumes of wildfire smoke that come into our region and can impact air quality for days on end. And this really presents a huge health hazard, because when you're exposed to that wildfire smoke, you're breathing in these small particulates that can get inhaled deep into our body and impact our lungs, as well as our cardiovascular system, our heart, resulting in a number of health complications. this can aggravate existing health conditions or make existing health conditions worse for people that have existing ailments. So those that have asthma or existing cardiovascular disease, they may be more likely to be impacted when there is a smoke event than somebody who, say, is healthy and doesn't have these pre-existing conditions. So definitely that plays into part of what makes people more vulnerable, is understanding what the baseline health is of our communities, and then understanding how, when we are exposed to things like extreme heat or wildfire smoke, what is the potential for that to aggravate those existing health conditions or make those conditions worse that people might be experiencing. It's also important to note that everybody is at risk for climate change and health impacts resulting from climate change. Even if you perceive yourself or see yourself as being young and healthy, that doesn't mean you're immune to the risk, because again, we're seeing conditions that we're just not used to, and our built environment does not have those protective qualities that have been integrated into the way that we've developed and built our homes, our businesses, our places that we occupy. And so it's really requiring us to think critically about knowing what and how to protect ourselves from things like extreme heat, wildfire smoke, even flooding that can be caused by severe rainfall or even sea level rise. These are all new and emerging conditions that we're really not used to. So up there with people who are most vulnerable, typically those that have a higher level of exposure to the outdoor elements. This can include outdoor workers, as well as people in populations experiencing homelessness. But it also means that, households that don't have the means to actually protect themselves because the costs associated with some of the protective measures that might be necessary, like buying an air conditioning unit, that might not be feasible for all households. So people that are on fixed income or low income, or might not have that ability to just spend their money on things that can be protective, can be more at risk as well, because there's less of ability to be able to adapt and to be able to adjust how we're exposed to these types of conditions that we're seeing emerge. We also generally see pregnant people among those that are most at risk, just because as the development of a newborn or a new child occurs, there's a lot of additional stress that's already happening within the body that can mean that exposure to other environmental conditions can really quickly pose a risk for both the unborn child as well as the mother. And then finally, we are seeing that climate change does have a range of mental health impacts. So, that mental burden, or that impact that the uncertainty of dealing with climate change has on people definitely causes additional health impacts. So those that may already be in a state of being depressed or having high anxiety, climate change can really add on to that, especially if you're unaware of what actions you can take to help protect yourself, because we're then stuck in this place of being or feeling potentially hopeless, where we might not know what solutions or what actions we can take, or we might not feel empowered that we can actually take those actions. So one of the big things that we do here at Public Health Seattle-King County is really try to ensure that people have actionable information and know what steps they can take to be able to reduce their own risk and empower our citizens and our community members to be able to take measures into their own hands to ensure that they can protect their own health and the health of their family and communities as we experience the unknowns of climate change together.
Thank you so much. That's so much important. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all the great information that you shared. And please, you can always, chat on the comments box, like in your native language, so that your people could get the direct information right away. Okay, and right after this, we'll go into Sina. Sina Packer. Sina is one of the community leader especially, for the senior program. And it's very, very important for them. Sina?
Yeah. Malo, thank you for giving me the opportunity. The topic that you had just talked about is pretty much answer all the questions that we came with this morning, especially for us volunteers who are helping elders. And those are the main important thing is climate change affect mentality, physically, and even food intake. They play a big role in climate change. So do you have any other advice that you give for senior elders who are most vulnerable with climate change, especially
Yeah,
when it comes to minority, other background like Pacific Islanders, Africa, we where we come from is totally different, and climate change play a big role in their lifestyle.
absolutely. So I believe I did leave out older adults as well as younger children as some of the populations that are more impacted by climate change. And for older adults, it can really pose a challenge because we've gone longer in our lives, or those that are even older than I am have gone much longer in their lives, being familiar with a climate and a world that has had really routine or really common weather patterns that we have been very used to, and kind of took advantage of it, being used to knowing that in the summers it's going to be warm, in the winters it's going to be cold, and in the spring and the fall it's going to be a little bit of a mix of warming temperatures if you're going into the spring and cooling temperatures if you're going into the fall. And what we're seeing with climate change is those patterns are being disrupted. So those patterns that people might have been used to are really starting to change. And we can't necessarily just use that historical memory to determine how the future is going to unfold in terms of the weather and the patterns that we're seeing. So in some ways, climate change can be a little bit more challenging to grasp with for older adults, because that framework that we're used to of like our history often helps us understand what we might experience in the future, and that is becoming more uncertain. So we're seeing conditions changing at a more rapid pace that's resulting in changes happening more quickly than really a lot of people can grasp their minds around, and a lot of people have seen unfold within their lifetime. For a lot of older adults and for senior populations, it really is important to know your health risks, to understand, what are those underlying health conditions? Do you have any health concerns that might be aggravated or made worse by things like heat or wildfire smoke, or looking at, if it rains a lot, is your home protected so you don't have mold or other bacteria growing as a result of that moisture? Because those things, when older adults are exposed to them, they can more easily result in health impacts. It's also important to know that a lot of seniors are also living on fixed incomes. So they might not have as much of a means to just take protective measures like buying something new that will help reduce the risk of exposure, because it's not within, it doesn't fit within their income. Apologies, one moment. It's one of these things that as we look forward, we are seeing things like extreme heat, more frequent wildfire smoke, and both of these things commonly impact the same populations, where we're seeing an aggravation or a disruption to people's ability to breathe, impacting their respiratory system as well as their heart and their cardiovascular health. And in a lot of senior populations, these are conditions that often exist within their respiratory system or their heart conditions that may or may not be identified or diagnosed. And then when we're exposed to something like extreme heat or wildfire smoke, that really, it stresses out our body. And so even if you may not have these conditions diagnosed, you can still experience these health impacts when exposure to these climate extremes occurs. We're trying to look at ways to increase the protective qualities of our built environment. And for seniors, a lot of the times there can be this isolation that occurs where people are left at home alone or don't have strong social connections. And that can also be a huge factor contributing to vulnerability. So just having somebody to at least periodically check in on you when temperatures are getting high, when air quality is poor due to wildfire smoke, having somebody to do those routine check-ins just to make sure you're okay, or at least is there to support you in case you might need to go somewhere that is better, because we do recognize that a lot of our built environment just is not prepared for the types of weather phenomena that we're starting to see. So whether that's extreme heat or wildfire smoke or flooding, these are risks that when we're exposed to, it can very quickly go from something that, oh, this is just normal, we're used to this, we'll be okay, to something that, oh, suddenly I'm having a hard time and I'm struggling with. And if no one's there to check on people, isolation can be a really big danger for folks because they might not know what steps they can take to improve or protect their health. And if no one's there to assist or guide, it can really leave people on their own to face these challenges in a way that really no one should go through. But it's really important to have that social cohesion and that social connections. One of the other things that can also impact our senior populations is the medications that people may be on can also increase our risk and exposure or vulnerability to things like extreme heat. So, for instance, some medications can actually reduce our body's ability to cool down, and that can result in a higher likelihood of overheating when there is something like extreme heat. Other things like, people that might be undergoing dialysis, if you have complications with your kidney, any additional stress on your body is going to reduce your body's ability to continue functioning the way it normally does. So it's really important for people to really know themselves, know their own health, and also know what kind of protections that they can take and have that social network to make sure that there are folks checking on them to ensure that they have access to those protections that can help prevent health impacts from occurring, especially as we continue moving into the future. It's a little bit daunting, but it's one of these things that we're seeing is we are quickly seeing each year being worse than the last. So the last several years, I think the last 3 years, each year has sequentially been the hottest year on record. And so that just means it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. Or we're seeing more frequent smoke impacts where air quality is being impacted for longer and longer and longer periods of time due to things like wildfire. We're also seeing pollen from plants being generated in quantities that we're not used to. So all these things can stress our bodies if we don't have the means to protect ourselves or understand what protections can be taken, and then having those social connections to ensure that people actually have access to those protections. And this goes for seniors as well as it does for the youth. Youth in some ways are often even more vulnerable than seniors because a lot of the times our youth aren't capable of making their own decisions. They don't have control over what mom and dad might go buy and what protective measures they might have access to. It's really kind of dependent upon just whatever their circumstances might be. And then a lot of the times our youth also spend a lot more time outside, being young, active, they like to run around. So it's really hard to keep them inside and reduce those exposures when there's things like extreme heat or wildfire smoke, especially when these things are overlapping with our summers. And here in the Northwest, I'm sure you all who live here are very much familiar with the notion that our summers are very short here. And we have a lot of time where it's dark and gray. So we want to make the most out of that time where we have nice weather. But if that's impacted by things like extreme heat or wildfire smoke, it makes it a little bit harder to get outdoors and actively engage those things. And trying to keep youth inside for days on end can be a really big challenge. So it's important to know what other things can we do to help protect them, but not take away from those experiences that kids need to have, because they're kids. They need to be active. They need to be outdoors. They need to be doing these things that are just naturally a part of growing up and being a child. But it's also ensuring that we're providing the protections for them and looking out for them to ensure that, if it's hot outside, they're taking more frequent breaks, they're drinking water, they have access to shade, they're periodically coming to a place where they can cool down. Even if that's just getting into an area that's shaded, that can go a long way for helping protect the health for youth who are outdoors. Smoke is a little different. That's something we just want to try to reduce our exposure to the extent possible, especially for the young kids, because they breathe in more air for their body size than adults do. So, and they're young and running around and active outside during periods like wildfire smoke, they're breathing in a lot more of that smoke, and that can have a bigger impact on their health. And there's things that we don't know yet about wildfire smoke exposure that could result in long-term health outcomes that we just currently don't have information on.
You.
Thank you so much. This is a great information, that is such a blessing, for us to know about our environment, the air that we breathe every day, how effective and how it benefits to each and everyone. Okay, I think I'm looking at the time right now. It's 10:33, and I know that the time is very limited. But I'll just take, one little second here to just pause, make sure you share with all your friends on social media and all your communities. We'll just play a little melodious song, for 1 second, and then we'll continue on. Pacific Islanders, Melodious.
Introducing Living Love Band live from the Bangladesh Samoa. All the way from the big island of Samai. Hey! Let me take. Turn it up. Hey, pump it up. Ready to launch. Yes, man. Say. Yes, second lady. Hey. Okay.
Okay, we just finished, from Sina Packer. Now we'll continue on with the Micronesia leader. I'll give you this opportunity. Please go ahead and ask your question right now. And please go into the chat box or the comments box and say something in your native language of what you heard from Edison, sharing this information. Nation leader, please introduce yourself. I'm sorry, we cannot hear you. Unmute.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, we got it. Sorry. That's how Islanders climate changes. Sorry.
My name is Russell. I'm with Manit. We're Marcelis, and I'm no leader by any means. I'm just a worker, but I do a lot of work. We're working between Oregon and Washington State. So right now we're going through the implementation of this kind of project. By that I mean by distributing air conditioning units. We've talked about all this before. And us islanders, we're very impacted by these weather changes. First of all, Marshall Islands is the top of the list. We're the atoll nation. We're very low, and any chance in the climate situation, we're the first one to be affected. All this talk about changing weather, tide, and everything, we're experiencing it firsthand. So living here in the state, especially in Washington State, all these extreme weather changes are affecting most of our older generation. And we've seen these older people are getting really, they're experiencing all this difficulties. Especially, I was listening to this guy talk about, diet, kidney problems, family situation. They live with their kids, living in the living room, and there's not enough air conditioning, or there's no way to buy a new air conditioning, and then the weather is bad and everybody's out of the house, everybody's working. So we're experiencing all this, and I'm afraid for the summer coming up, because I've seen it, and I've talked to a lot of these people that are experiencing it about how they're trying to cooperate with this extreme weather change that we're going through right now. I mean, and I've seen it firsthand. My mom just passed away last weekend. She was the one with the heart condition. She went through a few surgeries, and then the living situation was bad. And she was experiencing when the weather was really bad, and she lived in Kent. You're right, the building, she lived in a house, it's a nice house, but it wasn't built for this kind of weather. When it was really hot and she couldn't get out of the house, or it wasn't cool enough, or it wasn't all that. So I'm with you. My question was who's affected by it, and I guess I'm answering myself. So I'm just here to listen and offer whatever I can with the little information that I have. So I want to respect and honor this group, and thank you for inviting us to this kind of meeting. For more data.
Hey, thank you, Russell, and my condolences to you and your family. I know that's a hard loss, and yeah, I really appreciate and respect you for sharing that story with us. I think that speaks to the heart of a lot of the challenge we face with climate change is, even if we have protections at home or we've made those investments, we might be at work or we might be out of the home. We're not in the places that are protective, especially for a lot of us who work outside. It's not an option to just stay home because it's hot or it's smoky out. We gotta go make it that paycheck. We gotta get that income still to be able to meet rent, meet those bills, be able to put food on our plates for ourselves and our families. And so there's just so many competing needs, and that really is part of the challenge. Is like, how do we rank climate change and the need to adapt to these changing climate within that list of existing needs that we already have that, frankly, a lot of us are just struggling to meet on a day in, day out basis. So it's asking us to prioritize one more thing when our plates for many of us are already full, and it becomes a lot to manage and try to carry. I think that your story also speaks to that need of like really ensuring that our elders are connected and have those social connections for people who can check on them, and sometimes not just via phone call, sometimes being able to physically go over and make sure somebody is okay, because if they're not and they say that on a phone call, I mean, that's going to be needing to take a couple more phone calls to be able to get them that help. But if you can have somebody that can go over and check on somebody physically, then they can provide that help and assistance right away. And it's not always easy to do either. I mean, we're all working, we're all trying to balance our lives, and I mean, this is just adding to that challenge there. But it is really something that we have to be mindful of, and we have to know going forward that we don't know that it's going to be okay. I think we can safely say that, and I think that's an important part to acknowledge and recognize, that, you know, this isn't just normal heat. It's not just normal smoke. It's not just normal rainfall. We're dealing with things that really are unprecedented and have not occurred before. And so it does take us, it does require us to take additional steps to go beyond what we might normally do. Especially looking out for our older adults, looking out for our elders, looking out for our youth, looking out for the children, keeping an eye out for those that are more vulnerable because they might have these existing health conditions, or those that work outdoors, those that are experiencing homelessness. All those challenges that we might face on a day-to-day basis are being amplified by climate change. And it's really important that we look at this with the gravity that the situation demands, because it will take us all to respond and to react in a way that can help protect our health and protect the health of our families and loved ones, because we're dealing with a lot of unknown here.
Right.
Yes, thank you so much. Because of our time is limited, we only have about 17 more minutes. I will take this opportunity. Lydia, you can go next, you know, and ask your question. Lydia, from the islands of Fiji. Make sure everybody, after you asking the question, put it on the comment box, you know, like in your native language, what you inherit, you know, what you heard. And then also that would be very helpful for each and everyone. Lydia,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Houston. Appreciate your explanation. A few explanation that you have done has answered my questions already. The question I was coming up with, because of the summertime, people go out to the lake, have fun at the beach, trekking through the bush and camping. And what should we do to stay safe from heat and smoke impacts? You have mentioned some, and I believe that has answered my questions. But I just want to talk about the climate change as a whole. I'm from Fiji. Climate change is not new. It's not a new subject to us. It is part of us. And it is so real, and has taken drastic changes and challenges to our people back home. There was a study that was taken, and it was showing that the average minimum temperature is rising for our people back home in Fiji to 0.16 degrees Celsius per year. And with that figure, we have seen a lot of changes per year. The sea level rises. When the storm comes, the storm surges that causing coastal flooding. This has never happened in Fiji in the last how many years back. And Fiji now is prone to natural disasters. Fiji, our nation, has extremely high exposure to the tropical cyclone. Our normal cyclone season back home is actually from November to April. Now, what I have seen, everything is like what we human beings are doing. We're doing the opposite things of what our ancestors used to do before. The world that we're living in now, we actually doing the opposite things. So many things. If you really notice, instead of doing good, we do bad. From our culture and diversity to a mannerless society, from love and peace to chaos. So understandably, nature is also doing the opposite thing. From our weather back home, our normal dry season is now becomes a rainy season. And at times it's becoming a cyclone season. Back in 2016, let me share a little bit of stories about my home country, Fiji. In 2016, it was the first ever time for Fiji to be hit by a Category 5 cyclone. It was Cyclone Winston. Almost everything in the villages near the sea, there were a few villages that lost all their houses. It was the biggest cyclone ever that hit Fiji because it is all due because of the climate change. That's why when you see the number of countries taking part in the UN climate change conferences, Fiji is part of it. Actually, we were leaders of the COP29, COP26 back in Glasgow, where Pacific leaders and delegations attended. We were actually leader of that. And now this year, COP29 coming up in November. So the climate change is really happening to everybody in the world. It's affecting Fiji. From me, I was growing up there and I just left Fiji 2 years ago. I've seen it, I've experienced it. It's really bad and it's gonna get worse as we go along. So just a question for us here. There are many Fijians coming to live in the States because in Seattle here, we have summer, maybe the different types of climate happening around the state. I don't know because I'm still new here. For us, Fijian, for the Fijian community, our weather, we normally have tropical weather back home. Here, something new is the cold season. We don't have the actually winter here in Fiji. In Fiji, we don't have winter. It's just cold and warm weather. But coming to this place, Seattle, the summer that we have now, if you have any other
Lydia, I'm
advice that you
sorry
can give,
for the interruption, but because our time is very limited, we still have a lot of people like to give them a chance. Could you please ask your question? Because we only got 10 more minutes to go.
Okay, sorry, ma'am. Do you have any other advice for us in regards to heat that we are going to experience, plus the smoke impacts?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things for heat that's really important, especially for folks coming from warmer climates, is if you've been in the Northwest here for even more than 3 months, you're no longer acclimated, or your body's no longer accustomed to dealing with heat. You're actually now, your body's adapted to dealing with our weather that we have here in the Northwest, where we typically do not have extreme heat. So that means even when it gets into the mid upper 80s, even if this might be a normal temperature that you experience back home, here in the Northwest, because you haven't been exposed to that type of heat on a routine basis, your body's no longer used to that. So that temperature threshold at which heat becomes something of concern might be lower here than it was where you might be from, or where people might be from, where they're used to more of those kind of routine 80s, mid 80s. Just because we don't experience that here that often, those types of temperatures can really start putting stress on our body. So it is really important to be informed and stay informed and know where you can go to get accurate information on the forecast, so you can tailor your actions accordingly. If it's the first time in the whole year that you're seeing it be 80 degrees, maybe take it easy those days, because your body hasn't had time to adjust to that temperature yet. So just reducing your levels of activity can go a long way in protecting your health. Also, if you can, know where you can go. If you can't protect your house, or if you don't have something like air conditioning at home and you can't keep your home cool, know where else you might be able to go, whether that's a community center in your community, or something like a mall or shopping center, or even a friend or a neighbor's house. try to know where you might be able to go in advance. And then really, yeah, trying to know your own risk to the extent possible. Everyone knows kind of how their body behaves, what things cause their body some stress or aggravation or medications that they might be on. So it is important for everyone to take actions based upon their own risk perception and their own health. And if you don't know those things, it's important to talk with a medical care provider to ask if your body or if you might have health conditions that might be made worse by something like extreme heat or wildfire smoke. Any of these things that can really aggravate the body.
Thank you so much.
I will say I am happy to stay on. I can push through 11. Yeah, so I'm happy to stay on. I think this is a really important conversation, so I don't want to cut time short.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lydia, too. But also put it in Fijian language. Like on the comments box. Like what you have heard and what has been shared. In the climate changes. The next will go to Lowell Alik. Lowell, it's one of the director on with the Micronesia. Lowell. Hi, Lowell. Can you hear us?
Good morning and good afternoon. Sorry if I'm just joining in the meeting, but
The topic is about the climate changes.
on climate change. Russell and Jeremy, I have two of my colleagues who were here earlier. Can I hand it over to them and then maybe I can I'll follow up later. I'm just joining in and catching up.
Oh,
So
I see.
Russell and Jeremy, they're both from Manit, and they're running the programs in Washington State. I just joined in early, just a few minutes ago, and I'm catching up with some of the discussions right now.
Okay, that's wonderful. Okay, and who will be next? Because now at this time we'll give the opportunity for Mele Moala. Mele Moala. I know I did see you coming on. Mele? Please unmute yourself. Okay, I will just kind of go ahead and focus on those that are here with us or listening or tuning in. Please unmute your phone so we can be able to hear you. Okay, Pastor Paulina, I'll give you this opportunity. Do you have a question, about the climate changes? And also raise your hand, if we see you have a question. Pastor Paulina, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia. Just a question to our facilitator. You can see that when you look at people in this platform, you can see the majority are from the small island nations. Okay, and for me, throughout the Pacific, I know the climates are a bit the same. Okay, it's tropical. But I would just like to ask you a short question. Okay, the main things that I would see is like sea level rises. Okay, what good advice that you would give us? Okay, especially people from our islands. Okay? Small, and this is a reality to us, climate change, so not anything.
Yeah, I mean, with sea level rise, that really is a hard question. I actually, I started my professional career out with Hawaii State Department of Health, so know what it's like being out in the Pacific. And I mean, as temperatures increase, that the temperature of our ocean is also increasing. And as water warms, it actually expands. So that's in part what is contributing to sea level rise. It's not just the melting of the ice caps, it's warm water is expanding and taking up more space than it used to. And this also is what's contributing to the increased frequency of extreme weather like cyclones and the rapid intensification that we're seeing happening with cyclones and hurricanes. I'm not as familiar with some of the direct challenges that some of these small island nations might face. But one of the big things that comes up with sea level rise is, a lot of these small island nations have very limited fresh water supplies. And as we're seeing sea level rise higher and higher, there is a real risk of that salt water getting into that fresh water supply and contaminating aquifers that would make water unpotable. And so this is a real challenge that I don't have a solution to right now myself. I know that there are a lot of people much smarter that are working on this and trying to directly face this. But that is something that it is a concern in the long range as we're looking at the impacts of climate change. It's not just about land disappearing. It's about, do we have access to the vital ecosystem services like our fresh water, the food that we eat? Are those things going to be around in a way that can sustain us? One of the things that also is happening is it's in the small atolls and a lot of the Pacific is we're seeing coral bleaching because the temperatures are getting so hot that the coral just can't survive. And that's where all the fish that we live off of come from. So it's one of those things that it's not just looking at how is it impacting the land that we live on, but how is it impacting the ecosystems and the ecosystem services that we rely on? Are we still going to have food? Are we still going to have access to fresh water? Are we still going to have these things that we need in order for our cultures to survive? And that it really is a big of an unknown, and it varies from place to place. So I don't have a great answer. I wish I did, but this is something that really it is going to take a number of different strategies of looking at, are there alternatives to ensure that, if one food source isn't going to be able to be grown anymore or produced anymore, are there other food sources we can turn to for our communities to continue to thrive off of? Are there other ways that we can look at ensuring that we have protected fresh water, either through rainwater harvesting or through, looking at something even potentially as extreme as desalinating water in order to maintain that fresh water supply. And a lot of these things, it's really a last resort option, but in some cases there is a very real risk of are the lands that we're living off of going to continue to be habitable? Because in all cases, it might not be true that the places that we're from, that are our homelands, will continue to be habitable for our communities. And so in those situations, it's looking at where are places that we can go that maintain those community bonds. Because it's one thing for people to move, but it's another for communities to maintain that connection and those ways of staying connected to each other. So those support systems aren't lost if a community has to move.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Edison. Exactly, it's 11 o'clock right now, but thank you for extending the time. We'll take another few more minutes, to go on, and please raise your hand. So I think it looks like Lowell is having a question. Just briefly ask, 1 second, with your question, because we have to move on, Time is very limited.
Thank you, Edison. Lowell from the Marshall Islands, and working with the Marshallese American Network for Interacting Together and Manit. I'm here with two of my colleagues, Russell Langrin, the Resource Director, and our program coordinator, Jeremy Morris. My question is mostly here in Washington State. While sea level rise is not an issue or not a primary concern here in Washington State, but we are increasingly worried about the impact of heat waves. What measures do you recommend ensuring the safety of our vulnerable individuals during these challenging conditions? And what do you recommend that we take to our leaders, and how should we go about it?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this question up. With extreme heat, it's really taking whatever measures you can now to ensure that the home or the places where you're in or at indoors are capable of keeping the heat out. So even if you don't have air conditioning, you can use things like blackout curtains or shades or other things to help keep that direct sunlight from coming indoors and continuing to add to that heat. Fans, well, there's a certain point where you're just blowing around hot air. If you can do something like placing a block of ice in front of that fan so that air is moving over something cold, that can go a long way with helping cool down your environment if you're heating up. Hydration, making sure you have access to water, because dehydration is one of the quickest things that will impact people during extreme heat. So just carrying around water, even if you're outdoors, making sure you have water on hand and are frequently drinking waters and fluids to stay hydrated, while also avoiding things like coffee or other caffeinated beverages that can really also decrease your body's ability to stay cool. A lot of homes in King County and in the Northwest don't have air conditioning. So knowing what times of the day you can open your windows to help cool down. And really that's going to be in the early morning or late at night. And then the rest of the day, trying to keep those windows closed and those curtains drawn, or keep something on those windows to prevent sunlight from coming directly into the home. And then as a last resort, or not as a last resort, but really knowing where else you might be able to go to cool down if it is overheating in your home or indoors somewhere. What a lot of people don't realize here is that, the way that our homes are constructed and our buildings are constructed, during extreme heat, it can actually get hotter indoors than it can outside. So sometimes something as simple as just moving outdoors to an area that there's shade can be better off than just trying to stay inside and sweat things out, because those indoor temperatures can get hotter and remain hotter for a long period of time, even after the sun goes down. And then the final thing I would add is just really keeping an eye on those forecasts and knowing like how long is this heat going to be around, and usually really using that to inform your level of activity and your behaviors for a day. So if you're seeing temperatures remain elevated for a few days on end, that's probably a good time to not take on a lot of really intense active activity, and time to maybe be slower, just kind of hang around, let your body do its thing and try to cool down, and not trying to push it, because your body really is going to need a longer time to recover from any level of activity when there's extreme heat.
Thank you, Edison. I think this is something that I think we should probably share with the state and the county, that we islanders need air conditioners in our homes, and this is probably something that our insurance can probably cover. We're doing it here in Oregon. There's a program that's providing air conditioners to the vulnerable population. And I know that many of our older folks and our people have underlying conditions. And in the islands, we're people of air conditioners. Many of our homes have air conditioners because of the heat that we have in our islands, because of the tropical weather. Oh, thank you, Addison. That's all I had for today. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. And I know the air conditioning and making that something that insurance will cover is something that we are trying to work closely with the state for, both air conditioning as well as air filtration devices, so we can help prepare residents for both extreme heat as well as wildfire smoke. So that is something we are actively looking to the state to do and push forward.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you for your flexibility, with our islanders' time. um, I would like to ask maybe the very last question here, and please, all of you, if you could just make a comment, in your native language on the comment box. The question that I wanted to ask, I think you already explained a lot of the things, how bad it is, the climate change in Seattle, and how much, what is the safety U.S. city for the climate change? So I'm asking two questions.
Yeah,
How bad
so
it is
for
here in Seattle, and what
the
is the
risk
safe U.S. city here in the country?
So the risks in here in Seattle and King County from climate change right now are primarily focused on extreme heat, wildfires, and wildfire smoke, as well as severe winter weather. Those tend to be the three dominant things that we're looking at here. Sea level rise is posing some concerns, but a lot of those impacts we're not likely to see until the later half of this century, so we still have some time to prepare for those. But extreme heat, wildfire smoke, as well as things like drought, I think that's probably one of the bigger ones too. We're seeing a decrease in the snowfall that we rely on for a lot of our drinking water. So as we're moving forward with climate impacts here in the Northwest, I mean, we are very fortunate that we don't have too many climate extremes. Like when we're talking about extreme heat still, we're talking about numbers that are around 100, maybe up to 110 degrees. We're not looking at temperatures that they've experienced across the American Southwest or even recently in the East Coast, where temperatures were in excess of 110, 115 degrees for days on end. So we are kind of protected from some of the climate extremes that the rest of the nation might be experiencing. But I think as we move forward, our forests here in the Northwest do pose a big risk because a lot of the times, especially if you're new here, our forests are really kind of like our corn, where a lot of our trees are planted for agricultural purposes and logging. And this has led to a history of logging practices that have resulted in an accumulation of fire fuels or vegetation that can easily catch fire and contribute to wildfire activity, which then can result in wildfire smoke. So here in the Northwest, I don't want to be an alarmist or say it's better or worse than other places, but the Northwest is generally looked at as an area that is going to be receiving a lot more people because of climate displacement. So the Northwest, comparative to the rest of the country, is actually looking pretty favorable in terms of a climate outlook. What is the most protected area in the U.S. or the protected city? That's a really hard question because everywhere faces unique climate impacts and nowhere is completely isolated or going to be left untouched by climate change. So it's just a matter of what kind of climate impacts those areas are likely to see, which will shift. And so for some populations, they might prefer to deal with the heat and, they'll take on higher temperatures and look at measures like increasing air conditioning. And there's enough built infrastructure to prepare for that, then it can help really reduce the health impacts that might otherwise occur. And this is where I think even though Phoenix, Arizona has seen temperatures routinely in the hundreds of degrees, they're still one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas in the United States. But they have the measures in place to deal with heat because they're familiar with it. What they're not familiar with is dealing with things like extreme cold. Whereas places in the Midwest, they might be more prone to dealing with drought, which could impact agriculture. And agriculture being the basis of a lot of people's livelihoods in the Midwest, that might impact them differently even if they still have enough water to drink, they might not have enough water to continue irrigating their crops. And so their lifestyle is impacting. I think it really is just a matter of understanding the unique ways that climate change will impact different regions, and each of those regions taking steps to prepare their residents. I think one of the things with climate change, we've been focused so much on this fact of trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to prevent climate change, where part of that story needs to start changing into, we're going to be locked into some degree of change no matter what. So how do we start identifying what those changes are going to be and prepare for those futures, regardless of where we're at? Because there's a lot of good materials. There's the National Adaptation Report and the National Climate Assessment that both go into really good detail around what kind of climate impacts you could expect regardless of where you are. And this covers the entire United States as well as US territories. And there's a lot of other good research that is out there. It's just a matter of understanding what are the unique ways that climate change is going to impact different areas, and a question of if those cities or if those areas are actually taking the steps to reduce the impacts that those types of climate changes or those climate hazards are going to result in. So it's not just about understanding what the climate impacts are going to be, but it's also a matter of how active and proactive are those areas and are those communities in preparing for those climate hazards that they're likely to see. So here in the Northwest, we have a lot of vested interest from the state and local levels of governance to do a lot to prepare our communities to reduce the health impacts from climate change. So I'd like to say that we are possibly one of those areas at the forefront, but at the same time, there's a lot of areas that are still doing things a little more proactive and a little better than we might be doing here. There are other areas that, might be a little less prone to some climate impacts, but aren't necessarily requiring the same level of effort for preparing those communities because they may be already more accustomed to those kinds of climate impacts that they're currently dealing with, like Phoenix, Arizona, and extreme heat.
Thank you so much, for the great information that's very inspiring and giving us more knowledge about what's going on in the surrounding in our environment here in the city of Seattle. I also see the thing about a couple weeks ago that Seattle listed as one of the best cities here in America. Thank you. Yeah. Rain Festival City, maybe clean up that air too. Okay, do I miss anybody? Have not get a chance, to ask anybody. I look like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Lena, do you have a question that we can finally finish it up with? Lena?
Hi, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, that would be the last question. It's 11:14 now, and then we'll wrap up. Yes.
My question would just be, since we're going into the summer and it's been going back and forth with cold and hot, what's advice of what would be your advice for us to just be not be affected and be overheated, or what is your advice of to have us prepare for this bipolar weather that we're
Just to be safe.
going into?
Yeah, I think the best way to prepare for the summer is really, one, staying aware of the forecast. So whether that's the National Weather Service for looking at temperatures and heat, it looks like there's potential for some heat coming up following the 4th of July weekend here, coming up next week. So staying attuned to the forecast and knowing what conditions might be. And then for air quality, staying aware of either using the airnow.gov website to get up-to-date information on what air quality is in your area. and just knowing what the potential forecast is will really go a long way in helping determine what kind of activities might be appropriate. Taking the time to prepare your house and your home now is really essential. So not waiting for something like extreme heat to occur before you look into trying to get a fan or trying to look at getting blackout curtains or other things. These are things that really resources you should be looking into now. And for wildfire smoke, that might be something like using air filtration, whether that's a portable air filtration device or a HEPA air filtration unit, or even doing something like making a do-it-yourself box fan filter kit, which there are really great instructions on our website that you can look at. And see that my colleague Jen Dev dropped that into the chat there. But taking the time now to make sure you have access to those resources and just having a plan in place, really knowing if there's extreme heat, what are the things that you'll go, or what are the things that you can do, knowing, if your home's not protected, where other areas might you be able to go to cool down, even if that might be just taking a drive in your car that has air conditioning because your home doesn't. But simple solutions can go a long way, and having that plan can help you be prepared on what steps to take when heat or wildfire smoke do occur. And then really the final one that I'll add is maintaining those social connections. I think we heard earlier from one of our friends here on the call that, those connections and just the wellness checks, being willing and able, or having somebody who's able to check in on especially our elders and periodically make sure that they're okay, goes a long way. Because if people are just staying at home, we might not know what they're experiencing, and unless somebody is reaching out and checking on them to make sure they're okay and ensuring that they have access to the resources they might need, they're really left to dealing with these impacts on their own. So we want to make sure that people have those social connections and have those ties. So people are just checking in on each other and ensuring that everyone is doing okay, and neighbors are checking in on neighbors. And sometimes it might mean that we have to open our doors to people we might not necessarily know, but if they're part of our community, then it's part of our responsibility to do our part to help protect those around us. And that's one of the things that we're continuing to strive for here at King County, is really ensuring that our residents have access to materials that can really be protective of their health, looking at things like what Oregon is doing with making air conditioning and air filtration eligible for insurance costs. So people who might not have access to these resources can obtain these things, but really just doing whatever you can to prepare now, knowing where to go to get information on the forecast and staying aware of the forecast, and knowing how to change your behavior in alignment with what that forecast might be. So if it's getting hot, take it easy, reduce your activities. Probably not the best time to try to take on a huge outdoor project. Or if you're an outdoor worker, making sure that you have water and are frequently taking breaks to cool down and cool off. And then for wildfire smoke, if you can't avoid being outdoors, there are now requirements through Washington State Labor and Industries that outdoor employers are required to provide respirator masks for their employees to reduce their exposure to wildfire smoke. So, ensuring that if you work outside, your employer has a plan in place on what they're going to do for when it's extremely hot or if there's wildfire smoke, because there are requirements through Washington Department of Labor and Industries that employers have to have these things in place to protect their workers. And if they're not doing that, you can feel free to reach out to us at Public Health Seattle King County, and we can help relay that information to Labor and Industries, or you can reach out directly to Washington Department of Labor and Industries and file a complaint if you're feeling your employer is not complying with those requirements to protect your health as an outdoor worker during extreme heat or wildfire smoke.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you so much, Edison. I think we're coming to the conclusion of our program now. It's about 20 minutes we go over, but thank you for all this great and very relevant information, for each and everyone, especially with the Pacific Islanders community leaders. Also, one of the things too that I wanted to share, that Edison was in the Hawaiian State Department of Health, and so aloha to you also. And we'd like to invite you all. And also Jennifer Dev is a communication specialist for the climate and health equity with the Seattle and King County Public Health. We'd like to invite you all, and each and everyone will be happy to have you come over as one of our guests on our Tonga Day. It's coming up August 2nd. It's a Friday evening. We will share it, like this on your email. That will be our benefit dinner. And then also the August 3rd is the actual Tonga Day with our cultural performances and a lot of acknowledgement with our keynote speakers, like with government leaders and also our community leaders. And we will acknowledge, our upcoming generations, the high school graduates and also the college graduates. But also to come and enjoy all the hula, siva, Samoa, and Bula Vinaka dance, and also the ta'olunga. It's all the Tongan and cultural performances. So it will be nice, to see you all on our upcoming program. Thank you all, and again, we thank each and every one of you that representing, all the Pacific Islanders community, and especially to you two, Edison and Jennifer. Thank you. Tofa soifua, malo o fatu, and mahalo.
Hello.
Samote.
Okay.
And Marshallese, Jeremy, could you say something in Marshallese, how to say goodbye and welcome?
Mother.
Yes. Komodada Pariagwe.
Okay, don't forget our upcoming Tonga Day. Okay.
Okay, I won't. Thank you. It was nice
Thank
meeting
you,
all.
Pastor
Thank you. Have a
Aseli.
good-
Thank you, Pastor Paulina. Thank you, Sina Aloita Funapeka. Thank you, Lupe Talamoni from Asian Pacific Culture Center and also the Samoan
Naka
community
Sylvia.
leader. Thank you,
Naka
and
Tavali.
each and every one of you, and
Malo.
also Jeremy.
Nafa.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Last song. Enjoy the music. Don't forget our Tonga Day.
Thank you,
so
Madam.
much.
Yeah, we're gonna dance.
Yes, we'll come.
Thank you, Lydia.